Gone are the days when people thought that Spanish colonization had been our only bridge to civilization 100 years ago. But as historic revisionism seems to be the trend these days, allow us to discuss customs of the Tagalogs by Fray Juan de Plasencia. Let us close this month's Buwan ng Kasaysayan by instilling critical awareness on both content and context of one important record of our history.
Customs of the Tagalogs was written in 1578 by Fray Juan de Plasencia, one of the first batch of Franciscan missionaries assigned in the southern Luzon area to record the customs and ways of the locality. He was born in 1520 and reached the archipelago at the age of 58. After 10 years of service in South Luzon, he was able to finish Relación de las Costumbres de los Tagalogs. Here, he was able to vividly describe the ways of the Tagalogs, its social structure, justice system, and beliefs. From the lens of a friar, he narrated in detail how we were before they took over.
People back then were organized, as the tribal gathering or barangay was governed by the chiefs known as that, which is 30 to 100 families, parents, children, relatives, and slaves. Thus, Datu categorized the barangay in three social classes: the nobles, commoners, and slaves. First, as the nobles are also known as maharlika. They are freeborn, meaning they are not born in slavery. They don't pay tax or tribute to Datu, but they need to render military service in war, summon throw boats, and helps the Datu to build a house. Second, as the commoner are also known as aliping na mamahay. They are married who serve their master with half of their cultivated land. They cannot be made slaves, nor parent and children be sold and cannot be taken from their own village but remain unsold land.
Lastly is the slave, or also known as aliping sagdilin. Unlike the commoners that cannot be made servants or be sold, they serve their master's house and cultivate land, and they may be exchanged for money. There are cases to be considered whether the child will be categorized as a commoner or a slave. If both parents are maharlika, then their offspring will also be a maharlika. However, if a maharlika and a slave bore a child while they were not married, the children and their mother would become free. On the other hand, if a maharlika and a slave are married, their children will be divided. The firstborn, accompanied the third, fifth, and the following children in odd sequence will belong to their father, while the second, fourth, and the following children in even sequence will belong to their mother. All those belong to the father became free, and all those belong to the mother became slave. If they only had a child, that child would be considered half free and half slave. Furthermore, the society before was strict in courtship with such dowries as a requirement before getting married. This dowry can be a property or gold given by a man to a woman's parents. If both parents are alive, both couples should enjoy using it. But if the parents died, the unconsumed dowries and property would be equally divided to the children's. In fact, if the mother has no parents or grandparents by the time she gets married, she enjoys the dowry regardless of the child. However, if the couple divorce, where will the dowry go? As a matter of fact, if a woman divorces man before having children for another man, she returns the dowry to the first man and adds an equal amount to that. But if they are still not married, the dowry is just returned fully. On the other hand, if a man leaves his wife, half of the dowry must be returned to him. But if they are married and had children, he gives all the dowry to them and pays a fine additionally. Merely, fathers of sons at the age of marriage are giving them dowries, where half of it is given immediately, even if they are children. Indeed, it is like a marriage contract, and when one side breaks it, they shall pay for it and return the dowry.
The tribes or natives of the Philippines don't have temples for worshipping, but they do have shrines solely for the celebration of festivals called Pandot. And the whole barangay celebrates and unite, which they called Nagaanitos. In addition, they do have idols, gods and goddesses. But Hala is the maker of all things and all-powerful. They also worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. Aside from that, they also worship gods and goddesses, namely Mapolon and Batalik, Likha, Dian Masalanta, Lakapati and Indianale, and many more. Along with worshipping buwayas so as not to be harmed.
They also believe in good and bad omen, which include serpent, rat, bird sing in the tree, or if someone sneezes, the person who met such instances has to go back home immediately, assuming that some evil might befall them. They also practiced divination to see which weapon is useful and lucky for a particular occasion. More than that, the feast is held within 30 days. A male or female officiating priest sings poetic songs in front of idols that were anointed with perfumes. Objects of sacrifice were goats, fowls, and swine, which were decapitated and laid before the idol. Hence, they do this offering because of adoration, recovery of sick people, prosperous voyage when embarking on the sea, good harvest, good result in wars, successful delivery in childbirth, and happy outcome of married life.
Besides the practice and worship of the Tagalogs, they also have 12 ranks in the priest of the devil. First is Katalonan, an honorable position among the natives. Second is Manggagaway, a witch who pretends to heal the sick. Third is Manisalat, who has the power of applying remedies to lovers that would despise their own or even prevent them from having an intercourse. And the wife that was abandoned will have sickness. Fourth is Mangkokolang, who emits fire from himself at night each month that cannot be extinguished. Fifth is Okloban, a witch with greater efficacy than the Manggagaway. By only raising his hand, they killed whom they choose without any instrument. Sixth is Silagan. If they saw anyone with white cloth, they would tear out the liver and eat it.
Seventh is Magtatangal, who shows himself at night without his head and returns to normal in the morning. Eighth is Oswang, a sorcerer who is flying and murdering men with their flesh. Ninth is Mangagayoma, who makes charms for lovers out of herbs, stones, and wood. 10th is Sonat, a preacher who helps an individual die at which time he predicted the salvation or condemnation of that person's soul. 11th is Pangatahohan, a soothsayer who has the ability to predict the future. Lastly, there is a Katkayan and the man whose nature is of a woman or vice versa, who could be called Bayuki.
Furthermore, they have customs of burying the dead. For instance, a dead chief is placed beside his house, built with a little house in the porch. Mourn for him for 4 days and then laid on a boat which served as the coffin. Guarded by a slave, rowers were then replaced by animals. Slaves then take care of this. Then, the deceased warriors and the living slave will be tied together until the latter die. Relatives bewailed him, singing for him and praising his good qualities, and this grief was accompanied by eating and drinking.
Meanwhile, they do believe that there was another life which could translate as paradise or village of rest called Maka. This place was for those who lived just, valiant, without doing any harm, and had moral virtue. Conversely, there is a place of punishment called Kasanaan, or place of anguish like hell. All wicked go to this place and there reside the demons called Sitan.
Customs of the Tagalogs is a testament that Filipinos adhere to a structured socio-political system. Way before we were colonized, it remains an important historical basis on retained habits, beliefs, and traditions we possess. This primary source allowed Filipinos, especially students, to dip their eyes and ears on pre-colonial content with an understanding of their content.
It may have initially served as a documentary report to better understand our race and consequently to better spread Christianism, but it served a greater purpose today, which is to paint our long-forgotten image. Ang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay pagpapahalaga sa katotohanan.